Hello, dear friends. This is Saurabh Agrawal welcoming you all once again to Liticity, the channel which brings to you all the important concepts related with literature. Okay, friends, in this series we are discussing about some very important poems of 20th century. We are discussing some great poets and their major poems, and this lesson is especially useful for all the aspirants of NAT and those who are also poetry lovers. In this particular lesson, we are going to take poems by Philip Larkin, one poem by Philip Larkin, one by Welsh poet Gillian Clarke, and one by Australian poet A.D. Hope. So let's start this lesson. And the first poem which we are going to discuss is Aubade, that is by Philip Larkin. We all very well know about Philip Larkin. He is the major poetic voice of the mid century, 20th century, and his dry, sardonic, ironic tone is basically a representative of modernist poetry in Britain. Now, this poem, Aubade, this poem appeared in the Times Literary Supplement in 1977, and it was almost at the end of Larkin's life. And this poem is considered one of the most profound and moving considerations of death in English poetry. He has almost written a sort of swan song. And Aubade, those who know and for the new students also, basically an Aubade is a dance song. Now, what is a dance song? It is a literary genre which was quite popular in medieval courtly love poetry, also up to some extent in Elizabeth and Petrarchian tradition. It was quite popular, in which the lover mourns the coming of dawn because he must leave his beloved. One of the greatest example of Aubade which we found in English literature is that to be found in Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. Okay, but typical in a Larkin manner, in contrast to this medieval Aubade, Larkin is quite alone in his poem. Obviously, he is not courting or he is not feeling sad for his beloved. It is basically Larkin's Aubade is coming of the dawn is a welcome to this speaker because it dispels the fears of death that night brings. Actually, this persona, the poet persona, or the speaker of the poem is an aged man, and obviously each night he is filled with some thoughts, morbid thoughts about death. That is why he thinks that each morning brings a kind of promise. The poem is basically in 5 stanzas. Each stanza is of 10 lines in iambic pentameter. Okay, the poem begins a very well known line: I work all day and get half drunk at night. आप में से जिन्होंने भी लार्किन की poems पढ़ी हैं, he has always presented his daily routine life with a quite we can say mechanical kind of way. He himself was not very satisfied with his job as a librarian, which he has presented in many of his poems like Toads or Toads Revisited. In this poem also, he begins the poem by pointing out, I work all day and get half drunk at night. This particular line sets the scene of the poet lying awake in bed at 4 in the morning. It's almost the whole night is over. He is not able to get some restful sleep. Worked all the previous day, then gone to bed half drunk. Once awake in the dark, he is feeling alone with his thoughts as he waits for dawn to arrive so that he can once again resume the daily routine of his life. He can once again feel that he is alive. He thinks about what is really always there. In his case, it is the prospect of dying. Each night brings we can say a doubt in his mind that whether he would be able to face next day or not. A whole day nearer now. Each day is like he is inching towards his death. The unresting death makes all thought impossible. He's not able to mediate on other things because this morbid, this thought of that preoccupies his mind. पूरे दिमाग में केवल एक यही विचार चलता है. But how and where and when I shall myself die. These are the consideration which are basically we can think of that all old and alone people, they are filled with these kind of thoughts, and Larkin present the ruminations, the thoughts of such persons. He immediately admits this is an arid interrogation. He knows it is fruitless. Nobody can know the exact hour of death, but still, every one of us, especially old people, feel these kind of morbid thoughts. The dread of dying flashes afresh to hold and horrify. He presents the dilemma and the problem, the thoughts which are not able to went away from his mind. He says in the second stanza he says the mind blanks at the glare of death, or glare of thoughts of that. It is as though he is experiencing a vision of what is to come, though death has not come, but the fear of death, thought of that, these have surrounded his thinking, and he can visualize that is even more mortal. He can visualize what is to come. He doesn't feel remorse for things done or undone, but his horror comes from the prospect of simply ceasing to exist. It is not that he believes in some sort of religious kind of that there will be a judgment, there will be heaven or hell, but simply ceasing to exist. This makes him in such a pathetic condition. But at the total emptiness forever, the sure extinction that we travel to and shall be lost in always. This realistic fear that this existence on earth will completed, he won't be able to see or to feel the physical world around him. This fill him with these fears. The third stanza dismisses the platitudes of religion and philosophy. We have seen in many other poems by Larkin, like Church Going, that he is not able to find any consolation in traditional religious thoughts. And even here, he also points out no rational being can fear a thing it will not feel. So that is why he says that religion cannot bring any consolation, any kind of soothing for a man who is afflicted by the thoughts of death. Instead, Larkin explains that fear is a spatial way of being afraid. He says that nobody, no mortal can escape this particular way of feeling. And then we come to the fourth stanza, in which he makes more general statements. Larkin refers to the prospect of death as being just on the edge of vision, a small unfocused blur. He is still not able to witness death in a clear, distinct terms. It is just like an unfocused blur. But he is reminded that death is inevitable. Most things may never happen. This one will. This is the irony of human life, that no human being can ever delay or postpone or forever be away from death. It will happen. He now makes three very sober and revealing statements. Courage is no good. It means not scaring others. Being brave lets no one off the grave. Death is no different, whined at than withstood. What he wants to convey by these lines is that whether you whether you stay in a poised manner, whether you say that you are not afraid of death, or whether you cry, whether you shiver at the thought of that, all these things do not make any difference. Death will come to all, whether you whine at or whether you withstood. So he is once again ironically challenging those particular concepts in which say we should not fear death, we should face it bravely. He says it doesn't make any difference. In other words, one's attitude towards impending death makes no difference one way or the other. And then in the final stanza, reader is brought back once again to the particular specific point of bedroom. बीच में लार्किन जो है एक जनरलाइज्ड अपने थॉट्स प्रेजेंट करता है. once again he is focusing on the minute details of the specific setting of his bedroom. The poet once again refers to the inevitable fact of death. What we know, have always known, know that we can't escape, yet can't accept. One side will have to go. We all know this fact right from our basic cognizance. जैसे ही हम लोगों की समझ डेवलप होती है, we realize that death is the most inevitable part of our life. But still, knowing this, we cannot accept this as the harsh reality of our life. A new day is coming. The usual cycle of telephone calls, work, the arrival of the morning post is upon us again. Larkin ends the poem. The sky is white as clay with no sun. Work has to be done. Postmen, like doctors, go from house to house. Once again, the tiny, realistic details which fill the life. He presents these details, and the closing line is actually a reference to doctors who visit the very sick and elderly at home, and postmen who bring bad news of family deaths in their post bag. So once again, Larkin, in his typical dry, ironic tone, presents the cruelties of life. He doesn't want to either like Donne's Death Not Be Not Proud, or like in Dickinson's romanticized way. He doesn't deal in these manners with this cruel fact of life, that one has to face death, that death is always around us and it can take us away at any moment. I hope you enjoy this poem. चलिए next poem हम देखते हैं दोस्तों, and it is one of the most important poems of 20th century. It is Australia, which is written by Alec Derwent Hope. He is a prominent Australian poetic voice, and I suggest to all the NAT aspirants that you should read about him more. It is one of the very few early poems which Hope wrote about his native country. Hope himself made reference to the poem as one he wrote in a disgruntled mood when I came back from England. So basically, instead of glorifying his native country, Hope is actually critically analyzing its culture. Hope's criticism of the Jindy Warbok movement. Those who are not aware of this term, Jindy Warbok movement, it was a native Australian literary movement which proposed to encourage native art or indigenous culture. It has traditionally biased the analysis of Australia as a negative poem. People or critics from Australia, they have criticized A.D. Hope's stance towards his native country because it rejects Aboriginal culture and exalts European literary tradition. So it is seen as a kind of betrayal towards one's native country. But on the contrary, Hope's approach to his native country and its nascent literary tradition, which was just begin to develop, is clear cut. The identification with this nation of trees and its hidden possibilities surfaces here and there throughout the poem. Okay, we talk about the poem. In the first 5 stanzas, the poet talk about Australia. He describes how it is both a new and old country. Geologically old, because we know that Australia is one of the ancient geological part of this earth, but politically it is new, and how it is both a European colony and an independent but a parasitical country. That is why he uses parasitical country. And the very famous line of this poem, they call her a young country, but they lie. He says that, okay, politically it is a new country, young country, it is still in a developing phase, but actually geologically it is not a young country. It is not, and identifies the land with a woman beyond her change of life, the woman who has grown so old that there cannot be any further change. A breast still tender, but within the womb is dry. Womb is here, we can refer to, we can understand that hope is referring to the creativity, or we can say literary traditions, which according to him it has become dry. Australia may be considered as young by the world's standard, but it is empty within. It has lost its creative nerve. It has only external beauty but no inner beauty. Australia to him is devoid of culture, which is without songs, architecture, and history. This is most important thing. That is why he feels disillusioned and disappointed with his native country. And then he says Australia is portrayed as a country that is nothing at all, where there are monotonous tribes from Cairns to Perth. There are only almost similar to each other counties which imitate European and Western culture. The five main cities are compared to five teeming sores. These cities are nothing less than sore. The people who come to live in Australia do not boast of living, but rather merely surviving because of typical climatic situations, because of other we can say shortcomings. These peoples are not living, they are just surviving somehow. He believes that people who move here are rather unwelcome, and they are second hand Europeans. They are the copy of the originals, grow rapidly on these alien shores. They do not have an originality of their own. They mimic only. This is most important term in this poem, that he is basically criticizing that these people are basically, they are what they are doing, they are just mimicking the Europeans. Then further he says the narrator still hopes one day some prophet may come who will then describe the potential of this place. He ends the poem on positive lines: some spirit which escapes the learned doubt, the chatter of cultural apes. Cultured apes, it is once again reference to those Australians who are trying to copy whatever Western tradition brought them, which is called civilization over there in Western countries. Whatever according to Western canon is civilized, Australian people are trying to copy it. So that is why Hope called them cultured apes. Thus he ends the poem with a positive note. He says that some prophet would come from the Australian ground itself, indigenous, who would claim freedom and rights to liberate the Aborigines and Australian cultures from the colonizers. Okay, this was the poem Australia by A.D. Hope. Next poem, friends, which we are going to discuss today is Babysitting by Gillian Clarke. Now, Gillian Clarke is a central figure in contemporary Welsh poetry. She has also been National Poet of Wales. She is a very major voice in English poetry of postmodern period. Babysitting, it is poem of two stanzas, a free verse poem about a babysitter who is having a hard time babysitting child because of her own fears of abandonment. Actually, she is a mother herself, and she is now on her duty. There is a dilemma in her mind regarding her duty, regarding her true affection, and also the reaction of this child she is babysitting. The entire poem is focused around the emotions of the babysitter and the emotions which she projects on the baby. The baby is so young that it cannot articulate its emotions, so we are given from the point of view of babysitter. Uh, the speaker of babysitting is a mother, but the child she caring, it's not hers. I am sitting in the wrong room listening for the wrong baby. I don't love this baby. It is a very frank and candid confession of a babysitter. She is just doing her duty, not it is out of some motherly affection. The list of physical features like snuffly nose of a baby with a cold, the roseate bubbling sleep, it would be cute if the child were her own daughter. But not to love does not mean to hate. There is a neutral tone in the stanza, even in the description of the baby's imagined response to waking with a stranger over her bed. Obviously, the child would not feel as comfortable as it would have in presence of its own mother. The speaker knows how the child may react, and she is afraid of this particular reaction. Last two lines of the stanza ensures the reader there is indeed a missing link between the baby and her babysitter. They are not connected, they are not related emotionally or with some affection. The reason, basic reason being that the babysitter is expecting to feel disgusted by the eventually screaming baby, and she knows that the perfume of her breath will fail to enchant her. The baby would not be consoled when this baby would awake, and the baby will find that the babysitter is there, not her own mother. The second and final stanza of this poem discloses the reason the babysitter is unable to emotionally connect. What is the reason? That even though she is her caregiver, she believes this baby she will represent absolute abandonment. There will be no maternal connection, there will be no emotionally link between the baby and the babysitter. Her coldness could also be attributed to the fact while she sits here, her own child must be feeling deserted by her. Clarke thus offers a very bleak prophecy of the cold world the baby will face as a woman. This is basically her projection of the child when the child grows up into a young woman. The cold lover in lonely sheets, the woman who waits for husband to die in the terminal ward of a hospital, the ultimate abandonment. So that is why she visions a very bleak future for the baby itself, because she herself is suffering all these things. She is unable to muster up any affection for this baby. She is watching, or rather listening for. The babysitter fears the scenario in which the baby would wake up sobbing from the monstrous land of nightmares. Suddenly some bad dream would make the baby wake up expecting her mother's usual reassurance. The baby would think that her mother will console her, feeding the mother will feed her, but only she will find cold, frightened, unsure sitter. This basically thinking, this thought make her uneasy, this thought make her unable to connect with the baby. So the whole poem is a very graphic representation of a disconnection between the babysitter and the baby she is doing babysitting for. Okay friends, so she feels that after the baby finds her, she will not only be disappointed but guaranteed to find no connection between the two of them. And the poem ends very significantly, very movingly. Baby seeking comfort in the shape of a breast and the milk it provides. But speaker notes sadly, comfort will not be found. She will find me, and between us two it will not come, it will not come. So it's quite we can say pessimistically and prophetically the poem ends. Babysitter is emphasizing the comfort the baby would seek on waking up, the comfort, that love, that nurturing baby will eventually expect, but that will not come, that will not come. Okay, friends, with this we come to the end of this session. I hope you enjoyed these poems. Please, if you find time, read these poems. They are easily available online, and I thank you from my heart for your warm responses which you provide with through your comments, and I expect that you should inform me what we can do to make these videos better. Thank you, my dear friends.